call now on the Honorable Deputy Governor to say prayers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let us pray. Almighty God, from whom all wisdom and power are derived, we beseech thee so to direct and prosper the deliberations of the Parliament now assembled, that all things may be ordered upon the best and surest foundations for the glory of thy name and for the safety, honor, and welfare of the people of these islands. Bless our sovereign lady, Queen Elizabeth II, Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, Charles, Prince of Wales, and all the royal family. Give grace to all who exercise authority in our Commonwealth, that peace and happiness, truth and justice, religion and piety may be established among us. Especially we pray for the Governor of our islands, the Premier, the Speaker of the Parliament, the Leader of the Opposition, Ministers of the Cabinet, ex-official members, members of the Parliament, the Chief Justice, and members of the judiciary, that we may be enabled faithfully to perform the responsible duties of our high office. All this we ask for thy great name's sake. Let us say the Lord's Prayer together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. The Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord make his face shine upon us and be gracious unto us. The Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon us and give us peace now and always. Amen.
Please be seated. This Honourable Parliament has now resumed its sitting.
Administration of oaths or affirmations.
None.
Reading by the Honourable Speaker, messages and announcements.
None. Just to inform members that the Minister of Finance is meeting with us on Zoom.
Thank you, sir.
Presentation of petitions.
None.
Presentation of papers and of reports. Cabinet Office Annual Report 2019 financial year due be laid on the table by the Honourable Minister of Employment, Border Control, Community Affairs, International Trade, Investments, Aviation, and Maritime Affairs.
The Honourable the Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this Honourable House the Cabinet Office Annual Report for the 2019 financial year, inclusive of the financial statement report for the financial year ended 31st of December 2019.
So ordered. The Honourable Premier speaking to the report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I present this annual report in accordance with Section 44 of the Public Management and Finance Law. The Auditor General in her report has given an unqualified audit opinion of the Cabinet Office's financial statements. The unqualified opinion is found on page 34 of the annual report and reads as follows. In my opinion, the accompanying financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the Cabinet Office as of the 31st December 2019 and its financial performance and its cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with international public sector accounting standards. Mr. Speaker, 2019 was a year in which our islands continued to make substantial economic strides. We recorded our highest air arrivals as we welcomed over 500,000 visitors to our shores and marked 10 consecutive years of annual growth in stayover visits. What a difference a global pandemic can make. Our economy continued to show expansion through sustained growth in our GDP. Unemployment rates saw historic lows, and inward investments continued to increase due to robust consumer confidence in our economy and the future of these islands. 2019 was a year also marked by historic and other undertakings highlighting and benefiting our people. Mr. Speaker, I would like to take this opportunity to briefly reflect on how the resources with which the Cabinet Office was entrusted were deployed during the 2019 financial year. The Cabinet Office plays an important role welcoming heads of government and elected representatives to the Cayman Islands and supporting the Premier's schedule of international visits. Both are vitally important to promote Cayman's interests internationally and to secure understanding and agreements toward ensuring a safe and prosperous Cayman Islands. Mr. Speaker, in January 2019, I led a delegation to Europe to continue engagement centered around our financial services industry with the European Union on tax cooperation and economic substance. In February that year, I had the honor to address both the Cayman Alternative Investment Summit and Cayman Economic Outlook on the strong economic performance of the country and how government continues to support innovation and diversification whilst maintaining our successful financial services and tourism businesses. In March 2019, we were honored to have Their Royal Highnesses Prince Charles and his wife Camilla, Duchess of Cornwall, visit our islands. Upon arrival, His Royal Highness opened our modernized and expanded Owen Roberts International Airport. What followed was a whirlwind trip, including a visit to Little Cayman and Cayman Brac, where he opened the newly completed 25-meter swimming pool. The Protocol Office played a key coordinating role, ensuring that activities were well organized and well received. Mr. Speaker, in June 2019, we welcomed Lord Ahmad of Wimbledon, Secretary of State for the Overseas Territories, as well as heads of government from the Overseas Territories for the pre-joint Ministerial Council meeting, which I had the honor to chair. Following the pre-joint Ministerial Council meeting, the Cayman Islands and the United Kingdom government jointly hosted the inaugural United Kingdom Overseas Territories International Trade Summit. Our Policy Coordination Unit assisted with logistical matters and the successful execution of both events. Our Policy Coordination Unit also provided research and analytical support to me as Premier for the constitutional reform presentation to the Legislative Assembly. Following consideration and debate, the reform changes were unanimously passed by this House. I truly thank all honorable members for supporting the changes, which will give our citizens greater control over what happens in these islands. Mr. Speaker, much was done in 2019 to advance government communications toward not only ensuring that the public is well informed of policies, legislation, plans, programs, and activities, but also, if I may say, just as, or even more important, to obtain feedback informing such initiatives. In this regard, the following occurred. The first Cayman Islands Government Communications Plan was approved by Cabinet in May 2019. A strategic communications unit was established within the Communications Directorate to deliver cross-government campaigns. The unit delivered campaigns for strong public finances and for safer, cleaner, greener communities. Community public relations campaigns included the NICE work program and Older Persons Month. All communications channels experienced growth in terms of followers or viewers during the year, which is a testament to the communication team's attention to providing desirable content via the most suitable means to a variety of stakeholders. Mr. Speaker, Radio Cayman, as our national radio station, continued to expand its broadcast platform by streaming content and events using social media platforms. The Sports Extra talk show was also added during the year, expanding the variety of talk shows produced by the station. Information rights, both in terms of what individuals are entitled to and what should be considered confidential, is vital to our democratic system of government. In this regard, the Cabinet Office's Information Rights Unit had a very active year, delivering 18 proactive training and awareness sessions for public servants, including the provision of intensive 4-day training in data protection and privacy program management for 74 public officers. Mr. Speaker, 2019 was the second year of the Celebrate Cayman program, with the commemoration of the 60th anniversary of our first written constitution, following much lauded events in 2018 celebrating the 60th anniversary of our coat of arms. Activities, among others, supporting the celebration of our first written constitution included a special weekend of celebrations from the 29th of June to the 1st of July, including a formal breakfast with keynote addresses by the Prime Minister of Jamaica, the Right Honourable Andrew Holness, and Lord Ammon of Wimbledon, then Minister for the Overseas Territories, in recognition of the close familial and historical bonds between the Cayman Islands, Jamaica, and the United Kingdom. A friendly football match with retired stars from the United Kingdom, Jamaica, and the Cayman Islands, and a special church service. To wrap up the weekend on the 1st of July 2019, the Georgetown Hall, where our first written, the Georgetown Town Hall, where our first written constitution was enacted, was renamed Constitution Hall, ensuring that this historical significance of this building and the events that took place there are always remembered. Mr. Speaker, I wish to note one point that I believe is important for recalling our own parliamentary journey. Present at the renaming ceremony of Constitutional Hall was Mr. Arley James Miller, fondly known as AJ, the last living vestryman who was serving in 1959, the year Cayman adopted its first constitution. Bringing to life important historical facts such as this and highlighting the integral role our people have played in shaping this country are two of the main reasons why Celebrate Cayman was established. Radio roundtable discussions were held to give listeners the opportunity to explore the evolution of our journey to the modern Constitution. We were honored indeed to have as a panelist one of the first 4 women to stand in a general election after earning the right to vote and stand. Celebrate Cayman partnered with the Cayman Islands National Museum to curate an exhibit which takes a closer look at our Constitution and its history. I must once again thank all members of this Honourable House for their support and for getting behind this national celebration. Celebrate Cayman has truly been remarkable and a worthwhile investment in our people. I again invite members to read the annual report for the Cabinet Office to gain a better understanding of the many important accomplishments that have been made, too numerous to include here. Of course, Mr. Speaker, none of this good work could have been done without the professional, diligent, and outstanding group of people who make up the Cabinet Office portfolio, ably led by the Cabinet Secretary and Chief Officer, Mr. Samuel Rose. I am grateful for their tireless effort and dedication in delivering the very best for the people we serve. Mr. Speaker and members of Parliament, with these brief remarks, I again encourage all members to peruse the Cabinet Office annual report for the 2019 financial year.
Report of the Standing Business Committee, first meeting of the 2020 session of the Cayman Islands Legislative Assembly, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Premier, Chairman of the Standing Business Committee.
Honourable the Premier.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to lay on the table of this Honourable House the Legislative Assembly of the Cayman Islands report of the Standing Business Committee for the first meeting of the 2020 session of the Cayman Islands Legislative Assembly.
So ordered. Is the Premier speaking there too?
No, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Cayman National Cultural Foundation Annual Report 2016-2017. Creativity, Heritage, Education, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Minister of Health, Environment, Culture and Housing.
The Honourable the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, Speaker, it appears that I have a lot of these today. won't.
Are you laying them separately, or are you laying them all together?
I intend to lay. I'll speak on about 5 of them, and the rest I'll just lay.
Okay, continue.
Yeah. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the floor of this honorable House a report named the Cayman National Cultural Foundation Annual Report 2016-2017, Creativity, Heritage, and Education.
So ordered. Is the member, Honorable Minister, speaking thereto?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Go ahead. Okay. Let me take them. There's all over the place. I wonder how long. Diseases. And diseases, all of them. Yes, you can call all mine. Now speeches on all of them. Yeah.
Government of the Cayman Islands, Cayman National Cultural Foundation Annual Financial Statements for the 18-month period ended 31st December 2017, to be laid on the table by the Honorable Minister of Health, Environment, Culture, and Housing.
The Honorable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, can I have them laid all, mentioned all one time?
If that's your choice, certainly.
Yes. Thank you.
Cayman National Cultural Foundation Annual Report 2018, Creativity, Heritage, and Education. Cayman National Cultural Foundation Annual Financial Statements for the year ended 31st December 2018. National to be laid on the table by the Honorable Minister of Health, Environment, Culture, and Housing.
Honorable Minister, you're inquiring in regards to the Cultural Foundation reports.
Yes. Well, Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the floor of this honorable House a report named the Cayman National Cultural Foundation Annual Financial Statements for the 18-month period ending the 31st of December 2017. a report named Cayman National Cultural Foundation Annual Report 2018, a report named the Cayman National Cultural Foundation Annual Financial Statements for the year ended 31st of December 2018.
So ordered. Is the honourable member speaking to those reports?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in accordance with Section 17.2 of the Cayman National Cultural Foundation Law 2013 revision and Section 52.2, 3, and 8 of the Public Management and Finance Law 2018 revision, I would like to place before this Honourable House these annual reports for the 18-month period of the 1st of July 2016 until the 31st of December 2017. My minister has been making efforts to table outstanding reports prior to the end of this term. This report, along with the 2019 CNCF report, which is also expected to be tabled shortly, will bring this entity into compliance with law. Mr. Speaker, this Honourable House is reminded that CNCF is a non-profit organization regulated by the government and is funded primarily by annual grant through my Ministry of Health, Environment, Culture and Housing. Mr. Speaker, the scope of the CNCF's activities include the stimulation and the facilitation of culture generally, the development, maintenance and management of theaters and other cultural facilities, in particular the F.J. Harquail Cultural Center, organizing cultural festivals, the stimulation of development of local talents by means of training workshops, competitions, pageants, parades, displays, and other activities, and assisting persons in developing cultural and artistic expression, including the preservation and the exploration of Cayman cultural heritage. Mr. Speaker, the work of the CNCF is related to Cabinet's broad outcomes 3 and 6, as noted in the strategic policy statement. The best education outcomes for all children and stronger communities and support for the most vulnerable. As one of these 3 main cultural entities, Mr. Speaker, the CNCF is an outstanding resource, and its focus on Caymanian identity helps us build pride and strength. Mr. Speaker, the financial statements has been prepared in accordance with the standards issued by the International Federation of Accountants and its International Public Sector Accounting Standards Board. In coming to an opinion on the CNCF's financial statement, the Auditor General relied on an audit carried out by a public accounting firm. The Auditor General's issued a qualified opinion, the basis of which is noted as the foundation has been named as a defendant among others in a personal injury claim, where a judgment was awarded during the end of June 30th, 2016. The judgment awarded the plaintiff damages of $5,946,889, with a further sum of liability of legal costs still to be determined. We understand that the amount awarded has been partially paid by the Cayman Islands government, and no determination has been made with respect to whether reimbursement of the claim costs will be sought from the foundation, or if the payment will be considered an additionally contribution to the foundation. As the foundation is financially dependent on the Cayman Islands government, we are unable to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence relating to the amount of the damages to the foundation. Consequently, we are unable to determine whether any adjustments, if any, were necessary to make the financial statements. The Auditor General further states, except for the possible effects of the matter described in the basis for qualified opinion section on the report, the accompanying financial statements present fairly in all material respects. The financial position of the foundation is at the 31st of December 2017, and its financial performance and its cash flows for the 18-month period from 1st of July 2016 to the 31st of December 2017 in accordance with the International Public Sector Accounting Standards. Mr. Speaker, the annual report for the period outlines CNCF performance in comparison to budgeted targets. It covers a summary of the organization, highlights of achievement and risk management, summary of the organization, outlines the various programs, projects, and activities, provides commentary on CNCF guiding principles, as well as details on governance and accountability. Highlights of achievements, a summary of CNCF's areas of focus, actions and intended outcomes, and C, risk management, a list of CNCF's key strategic compliances and operational risks, their impact and actions to mitigate along with financial values of each. Mr. Speaker, in compliance with the Public Management and Finance Law, CNCF changed its year-end from the 30th of June to the 31st of December. Accordingly, the financial statements are prepared for the 18 months. As a result, the statements and the related notes are not comparable to the previous period. The statement of financial position shows that during the period, the total assets were $4,665,045, a variance of $36,380 against the budget target of $4,628,665. The total liabilities stood at $315,786. $78,338 above budget estimates of $237,448. The total equity was $4,349,259 compared to the budgeted figure of $4,391,217. The statement of the financial performance shows that total revenue was $1,300,899, a variance of $169,908 against the budget target of $1,470,807. The non-commercial value of CNCF's cultural development work necessitates that additional contributed income is raised through fundraising. It was projected that some contributed income would derive from international funding agencies. However, the majority require proof of nonprofit charity status. CNCF application for recognition of nonprofit status was still waiting approval up until the end of the budgeted period. The result was a limit on CNCF eligibility for international funding and a mean reason for unfavorable variance of $168,972 against the budgeted target of $437,457 in other revenue. The government grant for the 18-month period was $943,350. Mr. Speaker, total expenses were $172,822, less than the budgeted target of $1,704,092, with an ended balance of $1,531,270. Under operating and administrative expenses, $22,299 was paid for a one-off special project involving the fabrication and installation of headstones on the graves of two cultural icons, which was funded by a $24,000 grant from the ministry and was included in the cultural development expense. Mr. Speaker, CNCF also budgeted that costs associated with Carifesta, which is an event held within the Caribbean region every 3 years and occurred during August 2017, would have been $155,000. However, actual spend was reduced to $75,000 to be more in line with the actual funds received toward the event. In addition, the budget included general maintenance, painting, and other repairs of the F.J. Harkwell Theater for a total of $20,000. The level of funding budgeted to undertake these repairs were not obtained, and this spend was delayed to future periods. Mr. Speaker, in the Statement of cash flow. The total of cash and cash equivalents at the end of the period was $148,542, corrected. Cash and the cash equivalents include cash on hand, cash in transit, and in bank accounts. In meeting its liquidity requirements, CNCF closely monitors its forecast cash requirements with expected cash drawdowns from cabinet and receipts from third parties. CNCF maintains a target level of available cash to meet liquidity requirements. All staff received a 2.2% one-time gratuity approved by Cabinet in July 2016 for the period ended 31st of December 2017. Long-standing employees were advanced 3 points along with their salary scales in January 2017. An amount of $5,000 was paid to a key member of management as compensation for services rendered. The member of management wrote the script for one of the theatrical productions completed. Non-executive board members received no fees or remuneration. I wish to take this opportunity to thank the management of CNCF, along with members of the CNCF board, for their valuable service to this entity. Speaker, that brings to end the statements to this honourable Parliament in regards to the CNCF, and we can continue.
National Drug Council, Cayman Islands Annual Report 2013 to 2014. National Drug Council in Review, 1st of July 2013 to the 30th of June 2014. National Drug Council Financial Statements, year ended 30th of June 2014. National Drug Council Annual Report 2014-2015, 3 islands, 1 goal. National Drug Council Financial Statements, year ended 30th of June 2015. National Drug Council Annual Report 2015-2016. The National Drug Council in Review, 1st of July 2015 to the 30th of June 2016. National Drug Council Financial Statements, year ended 30th of June 2016. National Drug Council Annual Report 2016-2017. The National Drug Council in Review, 1st of July 2016 to the 31st of December 2017. National Drug Council Financial Statement for the 18 months ended 31st of December 2017, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Minister of Health, Environment, Culture and Housing.
The Honourable the Minister of Health and Culture.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to lay on the table of this Honourable House a report named the National Drug Council, Cayman Islands Annual Report 2013-2014, the National Drug Council's in Review, the 1st of July 2013 to the 30th of June 2014. The National Drug Council financial statements, year ended 30th of June 2014. The National Drug Council Annual Report 2014 to 2015, 3 islands, 1 goal. The National Drug Council financial statements, year ended 30th of June 2015. The National Drug Council Annual Report 2015-2016. The National Drug Council in review, the 1st of July 2015 to the 30th of June 2016. The National Drug Council financial statements, year ended the 30th of June 2017. The National Drug Council Annual Report 2016 to 2017. The National Drug Council in review, the 1st of July 2016 to the 31st of December 2017. The National Drug Council financial statements for the 18 months ended the 31st of December 2017.
So ordered. Is the minister speaking to these reports?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in accordance with Section 24 of the National Drug Council Law 2010 revision, I am pleased today to place before this Honorable House the annual reports of the National Drug Council for the fiscal years 2013 to 14, 2014 to 15, 2015 to 16, 2016 to 17. Mr. Speaker, the National Drug Council, commonly referred to as the NDC, became a statutory body in 1997 under the National Drug Council Law 1997 and began operations on January 1st, 1998. The purpose of the NDC is to coordinate anti-drug measures in the Cayman Islands. The NDC is funded primarily through the purchase of outputs by Cabinet of the Cayman Islands government. Mr. Speaker, the NDC focuses on 3 main areas. 1, policy and prevention. The NDC formulates policies intended to prevent or reduce drug abuse and to promote and encourage the implementation of such policies and programs, and to advise the minister on matters of law reform relating to the misuse of drugs. 2, surveillance, research, and information dissemination. The NDC conducts and supports surveys, research, and publish reports or other documentation on drug abuse and maintains a database of information and issues related to the use, misuse, and abuse of substances in the Cayman Islands. 3, monitoring and evaluation. The NDC coordinates the efforts of the drug abuse prevention, treatment, and rehabilitation through monitoring and evaluation of the implementation of anti-drug programs within the Cayman Islands. As members may be aware, the responsibility of the NDC was transferred to the Ministry of Health, Environment, Culture, and Housing when there was a change in the composition of the government in 2017. During the period of 2013 to 2017, the NDC at that time was under the auspices of the Ministry of Home Affairs. It was only recently that the minister became aware that the previous minister responsible for NDC had not submitted the annual reports for this period to the Cabinet of approval to be tabled in this Honorable House. Nonetheless, Mr. Speaker, the National Drug Council has had many achievements during these periods. I will state in summary the highlights of these annual reports and financial statements by year. For the fiscal year of 2013 to 2014, there was a reintroduction of the Substance Abuse, Misuse, and Education and Abuse Education Program at Her Majesty's the Cayman Islands Prison Services and the Youth to Youth Program at the high schools, which provided the opportunity for 9 youths from Grand Cayman and Cayman Brac to attend the international conference. Our highlights in their 2014 annual report includes collection of data on the importation of use of narcotics for quarterly reporting to the International Narcotics Control Board, INCB, reviewed the 2019 to 2013 National Anti-Drug Strategy for the Cayman Islands, and submitted a revised national plan for 2014 to 2019 to the Ministry of Home Affairs, provided support and feedback on the implementation of drug and alcohol policies for workplaces, advocated for changes to the liquor license law, and participated in a review and update on the Mental Health Law 2013. In reviewing the audited financial statements for the period, the NDC recorded that total revenues through outputs to government and other outcome of $544,787. The total expenses reported were $574,764. The reported net loss for the period was $29,977, which may have been attributed to the reintroduction of the youth development projects such as Peer Mentor and Youth to Youth program, which were dormant for about 10 years. The total current asset at the 30th of June 2014 was $376,849, and the fixed assets were $13,515, with total assets of $390,364. The total current liabilities was recorded at $47,655. Mr. Speaker, during the fiscal year 2014 to 15, approximately 420 presentations on the harmful effects of alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs were delivered in the schools, the community, and prisons. This was almost twice as many presentations that were delivered during 2013 to 2014. Other highlights of the 2014-15 annual report include design and delivery of the workplace drug education training, curriculum packages to heads of departments, carried out several initiatives for Alcohol Awareness Month, including radio appearances and distribution of information, leaflets in the hospital and clinic waiting areas. It's important to note, Mr. Speaker, that the NDC reported some of the challenges encountered, such as A, burnt out of staff and an inability to meet all the needs within the community on the 3 islands. B, policy initiatives have not been implemented or taken on board. C, the importance of data collection is not fully recognized, and subsequently obtaining data from the stakeholders continue to be difficult. Mr. Speaker, total current assets of the 30th of June 2015 was $397,949, and fixed assets were $10,242, with total assets of $408,191. The total current liabilities was recorded at $62,362. Mr. Speaker, during the fiscal year of 2015 to 2016, the NDC conducted Cycle 8 of the Cayman Islands Student Drug Use Survey, which we have gotten to know so well. Her Majesty's Cayman Islands Prison Services Survey, Cycle 4, was also conducted. The staff at NDC also embarked on several training opportunities and participated in policy and prevention initiatives, including providing feedback to the Labor Relations Bill in 2015, the development of the mental health policy, providing draft regulations for the liquor license law, feedback on the discussions regarding legalizing marijuana for medical use, feedback on the impacts of bullying and substance abuse, amongst many more. Several challenges were also identified that year, Mr. Speaker, in addition to those mentioned from the previous year. They are noted as follows. There is no guiding strategy at the national level to direct the efforts for drug control, and the NDC continues to advocate on updating the governing legislation and for implementing of a national anti-drug strategy 2009 to 2013 that is now outdated. The total current assets as of the 30th of June 2016 was $402,704, and the fixed assets were $7,479, with a total assets of $410,183, and the total liabilities were recorded at $51,559. Lastly, the fiscal year 2016 to 17, the annual report and the financial statements for the 18-month period ending the 31st of December 2017. For the benefit of His Honorable House, the NDC came under this ministry in June 2017. Mr. Speaker, over 600 presentations were conducted by the NDC within the school, community, and prisons. Other highlights for the report included the development of a prevention framework and prevention curriculum for the school-based drug education program, facilitated the evaluation of the Cayman Islands Drug Treatment Court. Youth-to-Youth program was further developed in the islands, and NDC sponsored a group, 10 teens and 2 adults, to attend the White Youth-to-Youth Eastern States Conference held in Rhode Island. Hosting of the second annual observance of International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking, which was recognized on the 26th of June 2017, and over 1,300 students participated. Hosting of the 17th annual Purple Ribbon bus service for 31st of December, and designated driver program for December 1st through 31st, 2017. The total current assets at 31st of December 2017 was $461,081. Security deposit was $5,500, and the fixed assets were $3,071. With total assets of $469,652. The total current liabilities were recorded at $71,524. Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General was given an unqualified opinion on all the financial statements of the National Drug Council for the period of the 1st of June 2013 to the 31st of December 2017. Mr. Speaker, at this point, I would like to thank the board, the management and staff of the National Drug Council for their hard work in producing these annual reports. I invite members of this honorable House and the public to review these reports in detail. I thank you.
Cayman Islands Government Unaudited Quarterly Financial Report, 9-month period ended 30th of September 2020, to be laid on the table by the Honorable Minister of Finance and Economic Development.
The Honorable, the Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the government, I beg to lay on the table of this honorable House the unaudited quarterly financial report with the core government of the Cayman Islands for the 9-month period ended 30th of September 2020.
So ordered. Is the Minister speaking there too?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would. Mr. Speaker, on the 6th of November 2020, the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development arranged for the gazettal of the unaudited quarterly financial report for the core government of the Cayman Islands for the period 4 days ahead of the deadline of the 10th of November, stipulated, or within 6 weeks of the third quarter ending, as stipulated by the Public Management and Finance Law. Honourable members of the Parliament were also sent this report by email on the 8th of November 2020. Mr. Speaker, the information referred to in this report is based on records obtained from the General Ledger of the government's financial management system on the 12th of October 2020. It is also based on the representations and judgments provided by the chief financial officers of ministries, portfolios, offices, and statutory authorities and government companies. Mr. Speaker, all of the amounts that I will provide from this point onwards are stated in Cayman dollars. The statement of financial position at the 30th of September 2020 on page 7 of the document shows that the core government ended the period with $2.5 billion in assets, $0.9 billion in total liabilities. Therefore, $1.6 billion in net assets or net worth. Cash and cash equivalents, including fixed deposits with maturity durations not exceeding 90 days, were $112.1 million, and marketable securities comprised of fixed deposits with maturity durations exceeding 90 days were $386.7 million, for a total of $498.8 million with respect to bank account balances. Due to the significant cash balances on hand, government continues to place funds on longer-term fixed deposits. And these longer-term deposits are reflected as marketable securities in the statement of financial position and are not included in the definition of cash and cash equivalents, which only represent deposits that are 90 days or less to maturity. Mr. Speaker, public debt for the core government stood at $261.4 million at the 30th of September 2020. This was $143.2 million lower than the debt balance at the 30th of September 2019. Therefore, government's debt has been reduced by that amount over the one-year period and will continue to be reduced with regularly scheduled principal repayments. Now, honorable members will recall that in November 2019, the government repaid its US $312 million or 261.3 million CI dollar bond using a significant portion of our cash and deposit balances and incurred borrowings of $153 million as a means of refinancing a portion of the bond balance. The statement of financial performance for the period shown on page 11 of the document shows that core government earned total operating revenues of $64.5 million and incurred total operating expenditures of $574.1 million in the period. The resulting operating surplus for core government was $30.4 million. SAGCs contributed an additional $1.7 million to the operating surplus as a result of their favorable performance. The entire public sector has produced an operating surplus of $32.1 million for the quarter, or 62% below budget. Mr. Speaker, revenue recorded for the first 9 months of 2020 was $68.1 million below budget expectations. This negative variance was mainly concentrated in the category of coercive revenue, which are revenues received by government by virtue of the coercive powers of certain laws. Coercive revenue recorded for the period was $74.6 million less than the budgeted expectations and $66 million less than the prior year-to-date actual results. The significant decline in revenues is directly attributed to the effect of COVID-19 on the economy, with one such area being the closure of the borders to international travel and tourism. For the first 9 months of 2020, both air arrivals and cruise arrivals have declined by 69% and 59.8% respectively. Coercive revenue items performing below budget expectations include the work permit fees of $28.9 million, tourist accommodation charges $17.8 million, or 64% less than expected for the period. Other import duties, $16.6 million less than budgeted. Cruise ship departure charges of $5.3 million, 62% below budget. And gasoline and diesel duty, $4.5 million less than expected revenue for the period. These negative variances from the budget expectations are partially offset by positive variances in other revenue items, such as stamp duty on land transfers, a $12.2 million positive variance, and mutual fund administration fees, a $4.3 million positive variance. Despite lower coercive revenues, investment revenues for the period were $3.5 million above year-to-date budget of $4.1 million. Donations received for the period were $2.4 million, which was $2.2 million above budget. These included donations of $1.8 million towards the cost related to COVID-19 mitigations. Other revenues also outperformed budget for the 9-month period ended 30th of September 2020 by $4.1 million. Sales of supplies and other items to combat COVID-19 to other jurisdictions and facilities amounted to $1.7 million. And revenues from the air bridges from London, UK were $2.5 million. Mr. Speaker, expenses incurred for the period of $574.1 million were right in line with the year-to-date budget of $574.4 million. The areas that achieved the largest underspend were personnel costs and supplies and consumables, offset by significant overspends in outputs from statutory authorities and government-owned companies and transfer payments. Costs relating to personnel for the period amounted to $265.7 million, which reflects an underspend in personnel cost of $9.7 million, or 3%, compared to a budget of $275.4 million. This favorable variance is a result of several ministries and portfolios having vacant posts, which to the 30th of September 2020 remained unfilled. Supplies and consumables were also lower than projected, with an underspend of $28.5 million, or 32%. Within the supplies and consumables classification, the most significant underspend related to the category of purchases of services, which accounts for 58%, or $16.5 million of the overall positive variance in supplies and consumables. Ministries and portfolios and offices have indicated that spending is anticipated to increase in the final quarter of the year, and costs will more closely realign to the budgeted projections by the end of the year. Outputs from statutory authorities and government-owned companies of $119.4 million, or $20.6 million, or 12% more than the year-to-date budget of $98.8 million. This variance relates mainly to increased support for Cayman Airways Limited and the Health Services Authority. Transfer payments of $43.5 million were $8.3 million, or 24% more than budgeted for the period. The variance is mainly due to the overages in financial assistance programs, offset by savings in other expenditure areas. These programs include sports and cultural tourism programs assistance, $6.4 million more than budgeted, support for business initiatives, $3.4 million in excess of budget, temporary financial assistance, $2.6 million more than budget, and education, agriculture, and land services COVID response and recovery, $2.2 million more than budget. Mr. Speaker, the statement of cash flows on page 16 of the document shows that the net cash inflows from operating activities totaled $50.1 million. The net cash outflows used by investing and financing activities totaled $27.7 million and $17.9 million, respectively. Investing activities include a $5 million drawdown on an approved interest-free temporary loan of $20.9 million to the Cayman Islands Airports Authority. The purpose of the temporary loan is to enable the CIAA to meet its ongoing operational and capital obligations while the government seeks the approval of the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office for a third-party loan to the CIAA. The temporary loan will be repaid to the government by the end of 2020 once CIAA is able to draw down on the approved third-party loan funds. Mr. Speaker, the overall fiscal performance reported for the period shows an operating surplus of $32.1 million, which is $53.2 million, or 62% lower than the budgeted expectations. This result, I reiterate, arises due to the effect of COVID-19 on the economy. The government's cash position ended at $498.8 million for the period, $177.1 million of which was held as reserves and restricted deposits, and $321.7 million as operating bank account balances. Mr. Speaker, clearly, the 2020 third quarter's performance indicates that the government will not achieve its initial 2020 budgeted performance of a $64.7 million surplus in core government. Equally important, I wish to assure all members and the wider public that the forecast deficit of $168 million that was projected in the early months of the pandemic will not be realized. Indeed, it is likely that the deficit for this financial year will be somewhere in the region of $50 to $75 million. Mr. Speaker, if this holds true, it will be a remarkable achievement for the government. For me, it will be the most significant tangible evidence of the government's fiscal prudence and stewardship of the country's finances. But I need to be clear, Mr. Speaker, we are not yet out of the woods. Our finances continue to be severely impacted by the effects of the ongoing COVID-19 expenditures and the fall off of revenue due to the closure of our borders to tourism and a reduced local economic activity. And this is why, as a contingency, the government took the prudent step, with the support of this honourable Parliament, to arrange a $330 million CI line of credit to assist us with meeting our financial obligations over the next 2 years. This will ensure, Mr. Speaker, that whoever occupies the seat of Minister of Finance in the next term will have the tools and resources needed to navigate the good ship Cayman out of the turbulent waters of this pandemic. In closing, Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleagues for their unwavering commitment and support for the fiscal policies and ideals that we pledge to the country to uphold. They have certainly withstood the test of time, and the wisdom of those policies have really come home to rest for us. I also thank the Deputy Governor, his leadership team, and the staff of my ministry, the Ministry of Finance, for all their support. It has truly been a collaborative effect that has yielded very tangible results, and I am truly grateful to everyone. Mr. Speaker, the unaudited quarterly financial report for the 9-month period is available on the Government and the Ministry of Finance website, www.gov.ky and www.mof.gov.ky, respectively. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, you will recognize that the Honorable Minister of Finance, though quarantined at home, is meeting with us by Zoom. We thank him for his participation, as I said, although being at home quarantined after a sickness. We thank him that he's still working.
Health Services Authority Cayman Islands Annual Report 2018, Building Excellence in Every Patient Experience, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Minister of Health, Environment, Culture and Housing.
Honorable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to leave to lay on the table of this honorable House the Health Services Authority of Cayman Islands Annual Report 2018, Building Excellence in Every Patient Experience.
So ordered. Is the Honorable Minister speaking?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in accordance with Section 52(8) of the Public Management and Finance Law 2018 revision, I am pleased today to place before this honorable House the audited financial statements of the Cayman Islands Health Services Authority for the 12-month period of the 21st of December 2018. The Cayman Islands Health Services Authority is a statutory body that was established as an authority in the 1st of July 2002. Under the Health Services Authority law, the authority provides care for through the 124-bed Cayman Islands Hospital and the 18-bed Faith Hospital on Cayman Brac. The authority provides primary and secondary levels of health care services for all three islands and its facilities. The main facility of the Cayman Islands Hospital is Georgetown, Grand Cayman, and Faith Hospital in Cayman Brac. The community-based service facility includes Little Cayman Health Center, Georgetown General Practice Clinic, West Bay Health Center, Bordentown Health Center, East End Health Center, Northside Health Center, the Public Health Department, Lions Eye Clinic, Georgetown Dental Clinic, Merrin's Dental Clinic, and the Cayman Brac Dental Clinic. Mr. Speaker, I will now outline some of the highlights of the 2018 annual report. However, I invite members of this Honorable House to read the report in full. Mr. Speaker, in 2018, the authority implemented designated parking spaces for older persons and acquired a golf cart to improve accessibility and convenience for the elderly. In addition, a patient and a family advisory committee was established to provide an avenue for the community to engage directly with the authority. The authority also embarked on a program to receive Joint Commission International accreditation to measure and benchmark clinical quality and outcomes against international standards. A protocol, policy, and business plan for bariatric services was developed and the necessary equipment acquired. The successful recruitment of an interventional radiologist to assist with the introduction of an expansion of innovative and non-invasive procedures at the HSA was accomplished. The authority also implemented a diabetic education clinic to deal with the increased demand for service for patients in managing their diabetes. The communications team was expanded to include a communications and marketing manager to support new communication initiatives such as the use of greeters in the main atrium of the hospital, the expansion of social media footprint through Facebook and other platforms, and a monthly radio interview initiative to create awareness of the HSA's services. The authority strongly invested in staffing, both clinical and non-clinical, during 2018. Additionally, nurses were recruited to improve the patient-to-caregiver ratio and the overall patient experience. A dedicated employee car park was also built for staff convenience while allowing the spaces at the front of our Cayman Islands Hospital campus to be used by our customers seeking care. A comprehensive master facility plan was commissioned to guide facilities and clinical services developed over the next 30 years. The plan outlines the renovations and expansion needs over the period. Mr. Speaker, I will now briefly mention the 7 primary strategic priorities of the authority, which provides the framework for 2018 to help in achieving the milestones of the organization and our commitment to excellence of our patients in the community. The priorities are as follows. 1, we will develop and implement a coordinated organization-wide approach to effectively manage our financial resources to ensure sustainability. 2, we will improve patient experience across the continuum of care by respecting and responding to the patient's value and preference. 3, we will expand the facilities to meet the existing need and projected growth, whilst being environmentally responsible. 4, we will become the provider of choice for bariatric services, maternal and child health, and interventional radiology. We will strengthen the HSA brand using all available media to ensure that the public is aware of the advantage of using the HSA as their provider of choice. We will attract, develop, and motivate and retain productive and engaged employees to meet current and future organizational needs. 7, we will strengthen primary health care at the HSA by enhancing patient services, health promotion, and disease prevention activities. Mr. Speaker, in reviewing the audited financial statements for the 12-month period of 31st of December 2018, the authority recorded total revenue of the authority recorded total revenue of $119,775,736 from government program, patient services fee, and other sources. The total operation expense reported were $119,284,265. The reported net income for the year was $491,472 compared to the 18-month period, 31st of December 2017, where the net loss was $8,900,974. The total current asset of 31st of December 2018 was reported at $72,432,571, and the fixed assets were at $70,908,086. The Health Services Authority also reported total assets of $143,340,657 and total liabilities at $150,678,199. The net assets were reported at a negative $7,337,542 for the same period. Mr. Speaker, the Health Services Authority ended the fiscal period with a cash balance of $22.6 million compared to the 31st of December 2017 balance of $31.9 million. Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General completed the audit and issued an unqualified opinion of the financial statements of the Health Services Authority for the period of the 31st of December 2018. This is the first time since becoming an authority that the HSA has received an unqualified audit opinion. For the benefit of this Honorable House, an unqualified opinion means the financial statements present fairly in all material aspects the financial position of the authority as at 31st of December 2018 and its financial performance and its cash flow for that year were in accordance with international financial reporting standards. Mr. Speaker, the authority should be applauded on the achievement of the clean audit opinion on the 2018 financial statements, and we hope that this trend will continue, as we all know how difficult and challenging the field of healthcare can be. It is important to note the other matters outlined in the Auditor General's report, specifically note 22 of financial statements, which states that the recognition of the post-retirement health care liability resulted in a net deficit of $7.3 million. This event raised substantial doubt about the authority's ability to continue as a going concern. Note 22 also outlines a series of action plans taken by management of the authority to alleviate this concern. Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General stated that her opinion was not modified in respect of this matter. Mr. Speaker, I would like to recognize the authority on their achievements in 2018 and publicly thank the board and management of the Health Services Authority for their hard work and perseverance in producing this report for the audit to be completed and for receiving an unqualified opinion. I now commend those audited financial statements and the annual leave to this Honorable House, and as I mentioned before, I invite members and the public to review these reports in detail. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Anti-Corruption Commission Annual Report 2019 to 2020. Executive Summary of the Anti-Corruption Commission's 2019-2020 Annual Report, to be laid on the table by the Honorable Attorney General.
The Honorable Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I seek the leave of the House to lay the 2019-2020 Annual Report of the Anti-Corruption Commission. Mr. Speaker, just seeking permission to lay items 17 and 18 at the same time. They were meant to be one. Thank you.
So ordered. Is the Honorable Attorney General speaking to the report?
Mr. Speaker, not really. Just to note in the report itself that the report is signed by the chair, Mr. Richard Coles, former Attorney General, who, Mr. Speaker, is no longer the chairman, having served his time. And the new chair has been appointed, Ms. Sophia Harris. And of course, we would like to record our thanks to Mr. Richard Coles for his tenure on the commission, including being the chair, Mr. Speaker. But the report otherwise speaks for itself. Thank you.
Questions to honorable ministers and members of the cabinet?
None.
Statements by honorable ministers and members of the cabinet.
The Honorable the Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the 14th of October 2020, the then Legislative Assembly approved Government Motion Number 4, 2020-2021, which allowed for a government guarantee to be issued in respect to a loan scheme to assist medium and large-sized businesses in dealing with the financial hardships of the COVID-19 pandemic. Since the 14th of October 2020, the documentation to bring into effect such a loan scheme has been reviewed extensively by the 5 local Class A participating banks, Ministry of Finance officials, government's legal department, and a private sector law firm. As a reminder to honourable members of Parliament, the key features of the loan scheme are: 1, the purpose of the loan scheme is to assist qualifying medium and large-sized businesses to meet their operating and capital expenditure needs, as well as any needed refinancing of existing debt. Secondly, the definitions of a medium and a large-sized business are: a medium-sized business is defined as a business employing between 30 and 50 staff, or it has annual gross revenues of $750,001 to up to $5 million CI. A large-sized business is defined as a business employing over 50 staff or has gross revenues of over $5 million. To be eligible for a loan under the scheme, businesses must be at least 60% Caymanian owned, be a Cayman registered company, a Caymanian sole partnership, or a partnership on the 22nd of March 2020, have 13 or more employees at the 22nd of March 2020, be in good credit standing with their bank and satisfy the credit approval and other requirements of the participating banks. The participating banks in the loan scheme are Bank of Butterfield Bank, Cayman Limited, Cayman National Bank Limited, First Caribbean International Bank, RBC Royal Bank, Cayman Limited, and Scotia Bank and Trust, Cayman Limited. Other aspects of the loan scheme are that the maximum amount each medium and large-sized business can borrow is up to $750,000 and $3 million, respectively. The maximum interest rate on the loan will be the prevailing CI dollar or US dollar prime rate plus a margin of 1.5%. The current CI dollar and US prime rate is 3.25%. The participating banks will charge their usual application commitment and legal fees and may require other security from borrowers in addition to the government guarantee. The government will provide a guarantee equal to 50% of any loan approved by a participating bank under the loan scheme for a medium or large-sized businesses, inclusive of a one-year moratorium period on interest payments for the first year of any loan. The maximum repayment period is 7 years, and businesses will have up to 1 year to apply for the loan from the announced start date of the loan scheme, being today. The government will waive the 1% to 1.5% stamp duty that may be applicable to any charges placed over assets to provide security for the loans. And the participating banks will make available a total of $200 million under the loan scheme, and government's 50% 7-year guarantee thereof is a maximum of $100 million. On behalf of the government, I wish to thank the participating banks for their willingness to partner with government in assisting medium and large-sized entities in any financial difficulties they may be experiencing. Mr. Speaker, this program reinforces and underscores our commitment to help as many people and as many businesses as we can with issues that they are facing with regard to the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to announce today that with effect from today's date, December 9th, 4 of the participating banks, namely Butterfield Bank, Cayman National, First Caribbean, and Scotiabank, will begin accepting applications under the loan scheme. The 5th bank, Royal Bank, will be accepting applications from Monday, December 14th. Medium and large-size entities that meet the eligibility criteria and the size definitions are now able to approach their bankers to make an application for a loan under the scheme. In making this announcement today, I thank my colleagues and all members of this honorable Parliament for their support of the program. A huge thank you to the Financial Secretary and those in the Ministry of Finance and the Attorney General's chambers who work steadfastly and with purpose to put the program together. Mr. Speaker, thank you for allowing me to make this important statement today.
The member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise under the Standing Orders 32.
Continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Honourable Minister say whether or not a Caymanian business owner who has multiple businesses would be able to apply on all separate companies? So, for example, you own 4 or 5 companies, you can do a loan program for all of those together once you meet the criteria?
Mr. Speaker, the
Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the answer there is yes. A business, each individual business is entitled to make application to their bankers for a loan. So a person owning more than one business can, each business in its own right can make application.
The member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Minister, and I hope all is well on your side.
Thank you, sir.
Personal explanations,
None.
obituary and other ceremonial speeches,
None.
raising a matter of privileges,
None.
government business, bills, second readings, legal services bill 2020.
The Honorable the Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the second reading of a bill entitled the Legal Services Bill 2020.
The bill has been duly moved. Is the Honorable Premier speaking thereto?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the bill has a long title, which, for the record, I will read. A bill for a law to repeal and replace the Legal Practitioners Law 2015 revision, to regulate the practice of Cayman Islands law, to provide for a system of legal education, to provide for a mechanism to deal with professional misconduct, and for incidental and connected purposes. Mr. Speaker, this bill seeks to repeal and replace the Legal Practitioners Law, as I've just said, to establish a Legal Services Council, to regulate the practice of Cayman Islands law, to provide for a system of legal education, to provide for a mechanism to deal with professional misconduct, and to provide for incidental and connected purposes. Mr. Speaker, the bill is aimed at, among other things, modernizing the regulation of the legal profession in these islands. The practice of law is currently regulated by the Legal Practitioners Law 2015 revision that was enacted in 1969, more than 50 years ago, and before many members in this Honorable House were even a gleam in their father's eye. Mr. Speaker, the number of attorneys and the nature of law practice in and from these Cayman Islands have changed significantly over the decades to the point of rendering the current legal practitioners' law almost obsolete, hence the need for a new law. Although there have been numerous amendments over the years to reflect the evolution of the practice of law in and from these islands, the current framework is clearly inadequate to regulate the contemporary nature of a 21st century legal profession operating in the Cayman Islands with a significant international dimension. And so, Mr. Speaker, it is my view, and that of many, that the law as it now stands is not only obsolete, but is actually harming rather than helping the practice of Cayman Islands law. Mr. Speaker, there has been, and there will no doubt continue to be, those who seek to stymie this effort, as they have done with previous efforts, and seek to question whether what the government is attempting to do by virtue of this bill is enough. Well, Mr. Speaker, the obvious response to that is what we have all agreed for decades now, that the status quo is simply not an option. Mr. Speaker, whilst most people, I believe, will agree that change is needed, the legal fraternity has been unable for more than 20 years to come together and agree and to make a start. This bill represents the closest that I have ever seen us come to a point where the majority, the large majority of lawyers in these islands have been prepared to get behind a bill to improve what needs improving. And that, Mr. Speaker, is a testament to a number of things. The Herculean efforts that have been made by the Honorable Attorney General and his staff and the government generally to put together a piece of legislation which represents, as far as it is possible, the diverse views of those involved in the legal practice in these islands, but also a bill which is capable of addressing the myriad of concerns that exist with the current legislation and the huge deficits which it contains with respect to a whole range of matters, not least of which is the inadequate regulation of the legal profession and the lack of provisions relating to discipline. Mr. Speaker, I do not profess that this bill is perfect or that it meets all of the concerns that have been turned up and that everyone is satisfied. But I say, Mr. Speaker, that it is more than a good start. And a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a simple step, with a single step. Our thinking, Mr. Speaker, is that with this initial effort, going forward, succeeding governments will be able to get a better appreciation of the scope and breadth of the legal activities that are conducted here and be able to work with the legal profession to put in place what all of us would like, an optimal framework for the operation of law firms and the practice of law in this jurisdiction. Mr. Speaker, when I became president of the Caymanian Bar Association in 1998, there were already major discussions that had gone on for some years about the inadequacy of the Legal Practitioners Law, 1969. That, sir, is now 22 years ago. Mr. Speaker, numerous attempts have been made over the years to get a modern piece of legislation. In the last administration, a bill actually arrived in this House and was debated and withdrawn. So, Mr. Speaker, we are now at a point where, in the absence of modern legislation governing and regulating the activities of the legal profession, the Cayman Islands is going without question to wind up on another blacklist. It is the only area of the financial services industry that is not adequately regulated. Mr. Speaker, one of the issues that has continually bedeviled this effort to modernize the legal practitioners' law over the decades is the issue of overseas practice of Cayman law. There are all sorts of suggestions being posited, and they have been over the years, as to how to address this issue of overseas practice of Cayman Islands law. The various permutations are perhaps understandable, given that as a country we have been grappling with this issue for decades, and up to now have not been able to formulate an agreed approach. But, Mr. Speaker, this cannot be allowed to continue, as the overseas practice of Cayman law is badly in need of reform, and a start must be made to resolving this. But, Mr. Speaker, one of the most unhelpful and ill-considered suggestions I've heard thus far is the one that says that because there is a global pandemic, we should proceed with the bill minus the provisions dealing with the affiliate offices involved in providing services on Cayman law. Mr. Speaker, I have struggled and turned this issue every which way I can in my mind to understand the connection between a global pandemic and not regulating overseas offices. It is a leap of logic that is necessary, Mr. Speaker, that I can't make in my mind. But perhaps, Mr. Speaker, when the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, who I've heard posit this particular view, rises to speak, he will explain to us all why there is that connection. Mr. Speaker, I have listened and continue to listen for a sensible rationale for this last-ditch attempt to torpedo the government's efforts to finally bring some order to this matter. But as I said, Mr. Speaker, I am yet to hear any cogent or persuasive arguments for kicking this particular can further down the road. Mr. Speaker, I ask one simple question. If we don't address this now, when should we address it? Mr. Speaker, the other unbelievable complaint I have heard, Mr. Speaker, is that the government is now rushing this matter through the Parliament. Really, Mr. Speaker? I don't want to spend too much time on this point, Mr. Speaker. I would only say that this complaint could only come from one who has been completely unaware of what has transpired and been transpiring in Cayman's financial services industry for the last 30 years. The issue of trying to put in place a modern piece of legislation to regulate the practice of law in and from the Cayman Islands has been ongoing for well over 3 decades. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, my plea to those who are still seeking to resist what we are trying to do with this bill is to beg them to view this initiative as the half-full glass and join us to see how we can put this framework in place, see how well it works and where it needs improving, and thereafter find ways to improve upon it going forward. The existence of these affiliate firms in other countries that facilitate the provision of legal services in respect of Cayman-related legal matters is an undoubted added value for the Cayman Islands. Mr. Speaker, that is a fact that has been lost, it appears, on the opponents to these particular provisions in previous iterations of this bill over the decades. They seem to believe, Mr. Speaker, that firms overseas which practice Cayman Islands law are somehow a massive detriment to the jurisdiction. They claim, I have heard over the years, that it results in the outsourcing of Cayman work. And it therefore creates a drain on the government's coffers, and that it takes away employment opportunities for Caymanian lawyers. Mr. Speaker, anyone who seriously posits those propositions must have absolutely no idea what actually makes the financial services industry in this country tick. And Mr. Speaker, if they believe that insularity is what is going to provide employment opportunities, investment opportunities, business opportunities, better incomes for local people, then, Mr. Speaker, they need to go back to school. Mr. Speaker, the majority of the legal matters or books of business handled by the larger law firms in Cayman and their affiliate offices are not generated from within the Cayman Islands. They are generated, Mr. Speaker, from outside these islands. Without the presence of overseas lawyers practicing Cayman law, the bulk of the business that comes to us would undoubtedly go elsewhere. Hence, the obvious importance of the affiliate offices. Fact 2, Mr. Speaker. The practice of law in Cayman today is not what it was when the Legal Practitioners Law was enacted in 1969. It is no longer confined to conveyances, divorces, boundary or land disputes, occasional personal injuries, assaults, or prosecution for drug offenses. Mr. Speaker, it is not even, the practice law is not even what it was when I retired as a partner from the law firm of which I was a partner in 2005. I have a son that is now 3 years post-qualification that works in one of probably the largest law firm. Mr. Speaker, I don't know what he's talking about, because fund work, which is what he does, is something that had just started to come into vogue when I retired 15 years ago. It's a completely different game, Mr. Speaker. Completely different game. And Mr. Speaker, the point I'm making here is that the practice of law has evolved into things far more economically and legally substantial, complex, sophisticated, and I might add, more lucrative than anyone could have contemplated in '69. I couldn't even contemplate those things in 2005 when I sold my interest, or retired, I should say, from my firm for the few shekels they gave me. Mr. Speaker, the practice of law in these islands has taken on an international dimension of immense proportion. And, Mr. Speaker, mostly to the benefit of these islands. Of course, it benefits attorneys handsomely. But as is very obvious given the impact of the pandemic and our increased reliance on financial services revenue, it is also not only very beneficial to these islands, but absolutely critical to these islands. Without doubt, the practice of Cayman Islands law in dealing with overseas clients has greatly enhanced the economic success of these islands and the opportunities for our people. We are talking about, Mr. Speaker, matters dealing with mergers and acquisitions, private equity and hedge funds, other funds, aircraft mortgages, leasing and financing, and other major cross-border sophisticated global transactions, among others. And Mr. Speaker, it doesn't take much imagination to realize that those are matters that do not originate here in Cayman. What this range of business demonstrates is that the practice of Cayman Islands law is vastly different from what we knew it to be back in 1969, or as I said, even back in 2005. As I said before, Mr. Speaker, in addition to what it started out as, it has taken on an international dimension well beyond the wildest imagination of any of the earlier generation of Cayman Islands lawyers, myself included. I say again, Mr. Speaker, that the work being processed by these overseas affiliate firms is of immense economic importance to these islands. Legal services like the accounting services, corporate services, business, etc., all with a significant international component, continue to provide enormous economic benefits to these islands. And these benefits go beyond what revenue is earned by government. The legal services also provide enormous opportunities for young Caymanian professionals in ways that I and those of my generation and those before me never had. These younger attorneys are now exposed to areas of legal practice that some of us never heard of in 1969. And therefore, even today, some of us have very little knowledge of those areas of legal practice. Additionally, with the existence of the affiliate firms, or affiliate offices, I should say, a number of our young Caymanian attorneys have had and continue to have the opportunity to be posted and to practice in other jurisdictions, in places like Hong Kong, Singapore, London, Dubai, and elsewhere. These opportunities, Mr. Speaker, will be formalized when the Legal Services Bill and the accompanying Legal Services Professional Development Regulations take effect. Mr. Speaker, the bill establishes the Cayman Islands Legal Services Council. It was, Mr. Speaker, so that members may follow, initially called the Legal Services Board in the published draft of the bill, as the regulatory authority for the legal profession and the practice of Cayman Islands law. The council is a statutory creature comprising the Chief Justice, the Attorney General, a non-practicing attorney at law appointed by the Premier, and a non-practicing attorney at law appointed by the Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, we are proposing to bring a committee stage amendment which will increase the number of members of the council to also include 2 practicing attorneys at law appointed by the Premier and 1 practicing attorney at law appointed by the Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, this in particular is to address concerns of the Honorable Chief Justice that the way that the board is currently constituted in the draft does not provide any opportunity for practicing attorneys to have a say in what in the management of the profession. But Mr. Speaker, I should pause to say that that is not because the government did not wish that to be the case, but because, try as we might, we could not get agreement between the two legal associations, SILPA and ALPA, as to how those attorneys should be appointed. And thus, it has taken our collective thought processes to come up with a formula which will allow that representation to be part of the Management Council. Ideally, Mr. Speaker, the view of the government, and certainly the view of the Honorable Attorney General, is that the profession should be self-regulated. Had we been able to reach agreement among the associations, as was the case with accountants, we would have been able to do so. And there would have been no need for the Chief Justice or the Honorable Attorney General to be on the council, nor a need for appointments by the Premier or the Leader of the Opposition. However, as I said, Mr. Speaker, it is a matter of common knowledge that I shall put it as graceful as I can, that there is still an absence of harmony among members of the profession. And so, Mr. Speaker, this construct, the construct that I've just outlined, is intended to ensure that there is a functioning legal services council, because the whole system cannot work. The system we're trying to set up cannot work unless there is a management council. Mr. Speaker, we have heard the argument about potential conflicts on the part of the Chief Justice or the Attorney General. But Mr. Speaker, these are professional people, senior, very senior lawyers. And I have no doubt, Mr. Speaker, that they would understandably be able to discern any potential conflicts that may arise in a particular issue and be able to take steps to avoid it. Although, try as I might, I find it difficult to discern what potential conflicts there could possibly be for them in this role. What it will be is another additional burden of work and responsibility, which I'm certain both of them would rather not have. But, Mr. Speaker, the situation that presents itself is this. Either we go with the construct that I have outlined, or we have no council. Or, Mr. Speaker, the members of the profession can find a way to decide amongst themselves how to put together a working and credible council. As I said before, the accountants have done it. And as I also just said, I'm sure that the Chief Justice and the Attorney General would prefer to avoid having these extra responsibilities. In any event, the council will need help, and so the hope is, Mr. Speaker, that members of the profession will be co-opted to assist on some of the subcommittees to be appointed by the council. And the council will also be supported by a full-time secretariat which will be funded by the government. Mr. Speaker, the bill ensures that the regulation of the legal profession, including for anti-money laundering, supervision, conduct, and discipline, all sit under the council. The bill provides for a disciplinary regime and the issuance by the council of a code of professional conduct. Mr. Speaker, the bill requires that every law firm in these islands has at least one Caymanian attorney who is a partner or member, depending on the construct, the legal construct of the practice. Mr. Speaker, the bill seeks to establish a framework that supports access to the legal profession and the training, development, and progression of Caymanian attorneys through the proposed Legal Services Professional Development Regulations 2020 and proposed new continuing professional development regime. Mr. Speaker, as I said earlier, the bill also seeks to provide a framework which, for the first time, would allow for some control over those engaged in the provision of Cayman-related legal services in other jurisdictions. Mr. Speaker, the bill therefore regulates the practice of Cayman Islands law in other jurisdictions and provides for a ratio of attorneys that ensures that the footprint for the practice of Cayman law in the Cayman Islands will not be smaller than that for the practice of Cayman Islands law outside of the islands. It provides a ratio of 1:1. That is, the number of attorneys collectively practicing on behalf of a Cayman law firm abroad cannot collectively exceed the number here in Cayman. This is an important enhancement and one that everyone must hopefully agree is useful and necessary to help to ensure that the control of Cayman law firms remains within these islands. Another feature of the bill, Mr. Speaker, is that through the Legal Services Professional Development Regulations, Caymanian attorneys would be considered first for roles that require the practice of Cayman law in overseas offices. Mr. Speaker, the bill ensures that every attorney practicing Cayman law overseas will now have to be admitted in Cayman and will fall within the supervisory remit of the Cayman Islands Legal Services Council and will be required to pay an admission fee and practicing certificate fee. Mr. Speaker, like all other attorneys seeking to practice here, they will have to satisfy the qualification requirements, including the fit and proper person standards. And this, Mr. Speaker, is dealt with extensively in clauses 29 to 37 of the bill. Mr. Speaker, perhaps this might be a convenient point to take the luncheon break.
Proceedings will be suspended until 2:30 p.m. 2:30 p.m.